be having the fireside chat session of E-CONCLAVE with one of our most esteemed guests for this event, Mr. Ankit Aggarwal. Mr. Ankit Aggarwal is the founder and CEO of Dare2Compete. He pursued his MBA from IMT Ghaziabad and went on to get a 100% scholarship from Harvard Business School for a prestigious leadership program. He knew where he wanted to be, and that made him opt out of summer placements during his MBA and choose the organizations where his skills would be polished for his big dream. Now it was after working with industry giants like Sapient and Deloitte that he finally let the entrepreneur within him on the loose and set out on a journey for disrupting the education space. Success never got to his head. His entrepreneurial venture, Dare2Compete, presently serves more than 2 million users from 20,000 plus companies and colleges across domains, including B schools, engineering colleges, arts, and science. With his team, he aims to gamify learning, engagement, and hiring while keeping all the relevant stakeholders on a single platform. He's an inspiration for all the budding entrepreneurs across the world. I welcome you, sir, for E-CONCLAVE 2021 on behalf of IIT Bombay and everyone who has joined us for this session.
Thank you so much, Karan. And thank you so much for that lovely and exhaustive introduction. This is the first time I'm hearing so many good things about me. Thank you so much.
Sure, sir. So as the moderator for this discussion, we have with us Ms. Karon Shaiva. Ms. Karon Shaiva is a social entrepreneur, mentor, writer, and a speaker. She firmly believes in the power of citizenship, entrepreneurship, and partnership for addressing some of the world's most pressing issues. A self-professed academician at heart, she has designed multiple theories and models based on the RISC shared values: responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and eco-friendly, for driving positive action by individuals and institutions. I'd like to welcome ma'am, and now I'd like to hand you over the reins for carrying out this session forward.
Okay, so good evening. And Ankit, I hope you heard the last line that Kadam says. He's handed over the reins, okay? So now you are in our control.
Sure.
But thank you so much. Firstly to, of course, IIT Bombay and the E-Club for having this wonderful session, and of course, inviting Ankit and giving me the opportunity to, talk with you, Ankit. So truly a pleasure. And welcome again on behalf of the whole team over here. So Ankit, I did some quick background search. Not that I don't know you, of course I do, and I think everybody knows you, but it's always nice to try and dig out something unknown, right?
Yeah.
So I think, your LinkedIn profile, and I'm sure everybody's going to go and look up all that. So that's really not what we are here for. I think what we are here for is to hear what you've never told anybody before. So any quick one that you can come back with on that?
Actually, there are many, but if people don't know it as yet, then it's meant to be that way, possibly. So I'll let it be. I won't dive into what people don't know. Maybe during the conversations, we may get into certain experiences, which I might be able to connect with people whom don't know. But let's move forward, and I'll be able to, let's say, tell people about it. The only thing that I want to start off right now is that Dare2Compete isn't my probably the first venture.
Yes.
Or so I treat all the businesses, right, as entrepreneurial in nature, right? Whether you're doing a business like a conglomerate like Dhirubhai Ambani, Mukesh Ambani, or maybe a business can be as small as maybe recharges, selling recharges, or a shop or so, right? So before Dare2Compete, there have been a couple of smaller, I would say, ventures, whatever you may want to call it. And then I dived into Dare2Compete. Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for saying that, because I think, somewhere down the line, success is, and I love the line from your introduction that failure never left you and success never went to your head. So I think it's great, and they say failure is always learning and all of that, right? But I like the word that you line is failure never left you. I mean, if you really dig deep into that, it means that failure stays with you for a reason, right? And you kind of learn from it. So, can you maybe talk about? And I also saw your TED talk that says it's a deviation, right?
Correct.
It's not failure and failing. Correct. So, can you maybe talk a little bit about that very quickly? What does it really mean to have a deviation in your life? What does it mean to kind of look at failure that doesn't leave you?
Sure. So I mean, why that line? Because I truly believe that yes, you should move on from whatever happened in the past, right? Whether you want to call it a deviation or a failure, right? But it is very, very critical to remember that subconsciously in your head. And that's why in the TED talk, I specifically mentioned about my setup. So I have a resume, which I call resume of deviations, where I have put in all the pointers. I personally don't call them failures, but those are deviations. And the thought is that at any point in time in life, all of us come to a point where we are standing at a juncture where we have multiple choices to choose from, right? What choice we take or what we select is based on our understanding of that option, or possibly all the options in front of us, and our background, right? And at no point in time we have all the information that we need to make the best selection. We make a best selection at that point in time with the information that we have. So when I say it as a failure or a deviation, I basically just mean that possibly I took a wrong turn only because I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's my biggest failure, which was also covered in that TED talk itself. So that's why that line is very, very true. I have a resume of deviations with me, and I basically urge all the youngsters and everybody to, I mean, even if they don't have the resume of deviations, at least they should not let the failure go away. It should be in their subconscious mind so that they know if they're facing a similar situation in the future, how they should be facing.
Great. So I'm going to take deviation as the hook for our conversation. Sure. Yeah. And when I look at your, the various things that you've done, and there is so much, right? Mm-hmm. One thing does stand out for me is your stint with, and I know everybody will talk about your corporates, and I'm sure everybody, always ask you those questions. So I'm not going to do that. But your stint with Teach for India, mm-hmm. for me, that really stands out as a very different experience for an engineer with an MBA and with a corporate background that you had, right? Mm-hmm. Tell us something about that. What made you take that up, and how was it like?
So, I mean, very frankly, I spent close to about 3 years at Teach for India, and right after Deloitte Consulting, which was treated as possibly the best job that you can get, all the consultants, right? Strategy consultants or so. I think it was, it's always good. I mean, not only for any corporate, but any person to be in touch with, let's say, the communities or the issues on ground, which I feel that majority of us, so I'll tell you what, personally, I am not that kind of a person. So if we have a room full of people, right, let's say if we have a get together or a party, right, if there is a social issue that crops up, correct, I am not that kind of a person who takes sides now. Okay, so whether it is a political question or a social question, whether the government is doing this or not, right? And when people ask me that, hey, you have been quiet all along, right? And my only answer is that possibly I don't know much about this topic, or I have not experienced that topic to the ground level where I can actually have a meaningful conversation with you. I may say that, hey, at the look of it, this government or this issue looks okay to me because that is probably bothering me, right? But there are always two sides of the coin, right? And I'll probably give you an example, and that's where I think the Teach for India stint did wonders for me, right? When I went into Teach for India, I started realizing that the problems that are faced by the students of those communities, right? Even if they are able to get marks of maybe 70% or 80%, or for that matter, even if they are able to study, correct, it means a lot, because we are privileged, right? I mean, what happens is that our parents give us good rooms to study. We have fans, we have ACs. But I've been through to those communities, right, where in a bedroom like I mean, I won't call it an apartment, but a house, right? There are 10 people living, correct? Now imagine if 10 people are living, how can a child study, right? During COVID as well, they have been studying through mobile phones, right? You may have iPads, laptops, and all, but that has been a different experience altogether, correct? So then basically we when we experience it, we basically look at education or their struggles in a very, very different manner, and then the thought process moves into a separate thing, that what do we do in our capability to improve it, correct? And the best thing that also happened, so this was at the root level, right, in India, correct? Now imagine, so I was working from Bombay, correct? Now in Bombay, these things are happening, right? It wasn't Bombay that these things are happening, right? Now you sort of multiply that with all the cities, all the states of India, correct? Because I mean, the education inequity exists throughout India, correct? Now the biggest thing is, it's not only India. I mean, if you see Teach for All is a movement, and now I think it's I think a movement with about 40-45 countries or so, right? We always talk about US or Singapore. I mean, personally, before joining Teach for India, I always used to think that, hey, US is a developed country, there won't be any let's say such issues, correct? But we went there, we also saw that, hey, the communities are there as well. There are similar issues that exist in India, exist there as well. Not there, I mean, in Singapore and US, UK, everywhere the same issues are there. Yes, the quantum of those issues might be very, very different. Right? Not the scale, but maybe how parents are dealing with them is very, very different. But the issues stay, correct?
Right.
So whatever, and the other thing that we realize is that whatever is working in US may not work in India or the other markets, right? But the issue is same.
Right. So would you say that you saw opportunity in the kind of diversity you saw when you went there, and it really helped you in your entrepreneurial journey? Like, is innovation really a product of diversity, or what would you say? Because obviously you use that experience to fuel another journey of your own. So how do you relate to that? Yeah.
So I mean, I would say, see, diversity also is a generic term, correct? Now you can actually use diversity for anything and everything, correct? Your socio-economic background, your education background, your gender, your experiences, correct? So I would stick to the experiences in terms of the diversity.
Right.
If you have different kind of experiences, yes, it basically, I mean, it is in a more better position to lead to innovation, but I won't say that diversity leads to innovation. However, to ensure that innovation stays and it reaches out to as many people as it can and makes an impact to as many people as it can, diversity is very, very critical within the team that is managing that innovation. Okay. So I would leave it there. It is important, but it is not the only thing. But in the team, diversity is very, very important.
Sure. And because you say the word team, that takes me to my next question, that as an entrepreneur, as a startup, as a scaled up enterprise now, right? What is the role of teams, in that success story? And also, what are the pitfalls, okay, of maybe not having a good team or a bad hire? So what kind of advice would you give around team building?
Yeah. See, team building. So there are different challenges you get when you're building a team at different point in time, right? So when you're a startup, correct? Let's say to recruit your first 5 or 10 people is the biggest task, right? Because and especially if you're a non-tech founder, right? If you're a tech founder and you're hiring a tech guy, you can actually access their skills or so, and you can hire them, right? But what if you're a non-tech founder? How do you recruit the tech guys, right? You can only recruit the tech guys based on their experiences or what is there on your resume, correct? So I would say that for me, 3 things are very, very important for any team member that I was recruiting earlier, now as well. But now skills are also important, right? One is that how that person has shown his ownership over the years in the previous roles that he or she has done, correct? Because for me, if I'm recruiting for a founding team, I need person to take ownership, right? The second thing is person able to think through in different vantage points and multitask, okay, which is very, very critical. Because I mean, if you're 5 people, all of them would have to do multiple things, right? And the third thing is that can you somehow trust that person or not, right? Because as a founding team member, I'll be reliant on him or her to take up different things, own it, and deliver it, right? Now, cut to, let's say, a company which has already 50 employees, people know it, 100 employees or so, right? We hire people based on the skill sets, right? However, every time and till date, right? And I mean, we had this offsite 2 weeks back with everybody, right? And we were praising few guys with gifts or so. And at that point in time, I made a nice case study out of it. Okay. So I basically gave all my team members 4 employees, right? Let's say A, B, C, and D, correct? All 4 were recruited. So let's say we were checking them on 5 skills. Hypothetically, let it be any 5 skills, right? To be part of Dare2Compete, you need to have at least 3 skills, right? If you have 3 skills, then only you'll be recruited, correct? So let's say one person had 3 skills, or 2 people had 3 skills, they were recruited, and one had 4 skills, he was recruited, and one had 2.5 skills. Okay, but that person, when we interview them, somehow the gut tells us that, hey, let's interview them because probably they'll be able to learn, right? So that's a gut feel, and because of that gut feel, you hire, right? Now, when you go along, cut to about 6 months into all 4 of them, right? Some may have grown their skills to 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. Some may have dropped their skills to maybe 2.5 or 2, correct? But the essence is that after 6 months, if you as the owner of the team has made a mistake, right, then you should acknowledge it that you have made a mistake. There has to be a process to ensure that if you have made a mistake, then it's your onus to first rectify it. When I say rectify it, so if you assess that skill wrongly, right, can you ensure that that person learns that skill, correct? So you need to give that person about a month or 2 to ensure that, hey, that person moves forward. Even if that person is not moving forward, then at the end of the day, you're running a company, correct? So you need to let that person go. And there is no harm in doing that, because it's a relationship, right? If that employee is not suited for you, or you are not suited for the employee, it is best to end that relationship, which is good for the whole firm. Because if people will see that, hey, we have an employee who's not well suited, then the other team members may also be impacted. So I would say that be acknowledged that if you have made a mistake, it's not a wrong thing to do,
exactly.
But ensure that moving forward, you don't do it.
I think you're saying what is written just behind you. You know, acknowledging mistakes is better than
faking
perfection. I think that was
awesome.
A perfect, awesome segue, and I think very, very valuable, advice. Speaking as an entrepreneur right now, and not moderator, for all the budding entrepreneurs we have among us, we have almost 500 of them listening to you. So yeah, I think that was fantastic advice, and I completely agree with you on that one. The other advice that maybe you can help us with is, like, should an entrepreneur have a partner or not? Should they go it alone, or should they look for co-founders?
So I'll tell you what. I'll again give a story, and there I'll sort of take. So my first idea that didn't see the light. Okay, so when I was at Sapient, so just out of engineering, Sapient is in Boston-based IT consulting firm. So we were three friends. Okay, and we were into movies. We used to watch movies. So then we thought, and this is about 2008, 2009, when there was no online so ticket booking websites, portals or so. So we thought that let's create a portal, correct? So when we started, all three of us, and 1 month into our project initiation, the Book My Show was launched. And trust me, all the other two guys basically said that, hey, Ankit, now the portal is there, we won't be able to do anything, right? Now, I personally wasn't able to convince them, correct? So, no matter what, if we all three were together as co-founders, right, then we have to really work as co-founders and move forward. If one doesn't agree, the other two should have the rationale to either make things agree or should have the courage to move forward. Unfortunately, at that point in time, I didn't have the courage to move forward solo. After about 5 or 6 years, I did have the courage to move forward solo, right? And possibly all three of us didn't even have the maturity to see that, hey, if the other portal has been launched, that there's an opportunity, correct? So I would say that it's always better to have the co-founder, maybe one or two co-founder. I would still say that more than three is a herd, and then you won't be able to make decisions. It's always good to have a co-founder, but at Dare2Compete, I don't have any, right? So I'm going solo. So it's not critical to have a co-founder as such, but it's always better.
Awesome. So, Ankit, another milestone in your illustrious journey, okay, is your trip to Harvard. Yeah. And I think, very often training, education, once you're in your career, so to speak, okay, people use it more as a stepping stool to kind of get further, increments and further new jobs. But as an entrepreneur, what would be your advice to sharpen the saw, so to speak? Yeah.
No, in fact, let's leave that. Okay, I'm just thinking to do a course next year. Very frankly, I was I really wanted to take a break for about 2 to 3 weeks, go for a course, think through everything. I should have a professor or my peers thinking through various aspects or so. Why I need that? Only because to sharpen my mind, okay, and to give me different perspectives. So when I was studying for that certification program, right, for HBS, the best part was that in every class, in every lecture, we were made to think through. I mean, there were no theory, nothing else, right? And that's the beauty of it. The guys whom you work with, when you interact with them, they give you different vantage points. You then start thinking of your problem from all those vantage points when you actually practically do those things, right? So that was best. But I mean, personally, I'm not eyeing for a job, right? So for me, the main motivation is not to maybe have a better career at hand. For me, I think personally will be that I always want my mind to be active, right? And after you have done your MBA, especially where I am a decade ahead of when I did my MBA, right? I still need those, I would say, kick in my head to basically ensure that I'm always doing or thinking about few elements. And I think that's where education plays a major role. Unfortunately for me, I realized it after all my education was over. But for all the guys who are currently pursuing, don't let go these years, because these are the best lives. Experience as much as possible, because you don't have anything to lose. Try out anything, anytime, because these are the best part of your life.
Yeah, wonderful advice. And I'm sure many of them are listening and already thinking about their plans. So thank you for saying that. Again, another milestone, I mean, I'm sure, where you have kind of scale to such an extent, as you said, 2 million people. What are those kind of strategies you think that you adopted differently? Because I think when you spoke about Book My Show, like you said, that was validation of what you were doing. Unfortunately, your founders did not realize it, and therefore they just felt, oh, there's competition, and let me not go there, right? And so you did not go ahead. How would you twist and turn that around to say that by staying ahead all the time, what have you done differently that others or competitors, so to speak, have not been able to?
Oh, see, I won't say whether they have not been able to do it, very frankly, right? Everybody tried new things. So in the startup world, everybody says, and all the VCs will be happy when I say this, right? Try new things faster, fail fast, and move forward, correct? I take it to a different level, which I mean, two things I did today itself, right? To try things, right? Because if you're not trying anything, anyways, it's not happening, right? I can't explain what I did today, but eventually I read an article, okay, about something yesterday night, and that article was in my mind, right? So I sent an email to the subject in that article, okay, that hey, I read this article. These are the pointers that you have described. I think there's a better alternative, and that I wrote maybe a 2-paragraph or 3-paragraph email, okay, to them. I don't know what that impact will be, whether there'll be another article or whether they'll reach out to me or so, but I don't know it, right? And that's why I mentioned in the last line that, hey, please don't treat this email as just another email, or just that anybody can write you. I've written that email just out of curiosity. I don't know whether I will get a response or not, but I will always hustle and try to do these things till I get a response, right? So I think that's where the motto within Dare2Compete has been. And what I tell people is that if you're sure that there won't be any negative thing, right? So when marketing team comes to me and say that, hey, we want to launch this marketing campaign, I don't see the positive of it, right? I'm just saying that there might be a positive, it may go neutral or it may go viral, doesn't matter, right? Just think through that there should not be any negative element to it, right? Because you will have to try out multiple things. One will click, two will click, but you'll have to try on things. But if you already know at the time of launching it that, hey, there are certain repercussions that may happen, then probably ensure that you deal with those repercussions earlier. I think that has helped Dare2Compete as well, because we have launched many things sooner, faster. At times we have failed as well, but that has given us probably encouragement for the whole team and for me as well to move forward in uncharted territories, which the other guys haven't been able to go, only because for them it might be a small market, but for us, we expanded the pie and created that market.
I think that is very, very encouraging advice. And I'm sure, again, with so many youngsters and budding entrepreneurs over here, to go fearlessly when no one has gone before, right? I mean, that's what we really are saying. So that's great advice. Very recently, or rather not very recently, but recently at least, the gig economy has become like the big deal, right? To go there. So, and you earlier said in your conversation about experiences, that ultimately it is experiences that really take you forward, whether it's through innovation or whether it is through for success, right? Would you advise that a person goes for a job, works a job, for a few years, and then looks at maybe, becoming an entrepreneur? Or do you say that they should look at the gig economy and get as much varied experiences as possible, and then, really get into being an entrepreneur? And of course, there are some who go and become an entrepreneur right out of, school and college. So what do you think is really?
For me, I think it's subjective, but for me, I mean, whether you're working in a corporate as a full-time employee or whether you're a gig worker, there's not much of a difference. So the difference is in terms of you managing your time and you managing your finances and working from. So those are, let's say, tangible ones, right? In terms of money, time, and convenience,
Right.
essentially, right? That doesn't have to do with anything with respect to the experiences, right? So let me give an example. So the skill sets that you pose, if you're working in a company, you will be using those skill sets, right? And if you're working in a company, the chances are that you may work on different projects. So let's say in consulting, right? You are a consultant. So you may work on different projects within Deloitte, McKinsey, BCG or so, or you work like a gig worker with maybe 3 different clients and 3 different type of projects, right?
Right.
It's almost the same, right? The only difference is that the gig actually gives you freedom when you want to work, how you want to work, with whom you want to work, and for what money you want to work, right? The company doesn't give you that freedom, right? So whether you do this or that, it doesn't matter, correct? The experiences will be far more similar. The diversified experiences can still be, you can still get it from the corporate as well. My only advice will be that, I mean, you can't be in a mindset today that, hey, after 5 years, I'll become an entrepreneur. For 5 years, let me do the gig economy or do a corporate job. I think that's the wrong mindset, correct? If you know you have a problem, if you have an idea, forget about whether you have the experience or not. You should dive in, because once you dive in, you will start experiencing things, right? You may convert your first client after 6 months or 12 months or maybe 18 months. That's irrelevant, right? So if you have an idea, you may convert a client after 18 months, because in the first 18 months you have learned. Vis-a-vis, if you have gone for a corporate and you have worked for about 18 months, effectively after that as well, you will be converting client only after 18 months. So net it's zero. So I would say, if you have an idea, start now rather than wait for your corporate experience or the gig economy to help you out.
Maybe let me paraphrase that question just a little bit more, because I think a lot of this is really important, I feel, at least for a lot of people, because when they start their organizations, systems and processes. Now, if you see in the corporate world, systems and processes are very much set up. Whereas in the gig economy, you're not likely, like you said, the flexibility is so much more. You may not really be getting into their operations. And so you don't really follow systems and processes to that degree. And then when you get into a startup, again, in the initial stages, it may be, really crazy. You're just doing so much so fast, and you may not have those systems in place. But as you scale, those become very, very essential. So that's really where my question was coming from. So maybe I'll paraphrase it and say, how critical is systems and processes for a startup, and then for a scaled up enterprise? Yeah.
I mean, very frankly, again, let me see through as a person who comes into my startup, right? They had all the processes already, right? Even small processes of filing for reimbursements or downloading salary receipts or so, correct? In a startup, at the start, you may not have it, right? You start creating a salary slip when somebody asks you that, hey, I need a salary slip. Correct. So I think you always learn from those things, right? So the only thing will be that in a gig economy, when a person would be asking you, correct, that, hey, send me an invoice, you will start creating an invoice, and then that becomes your experience. In a matured corporate environment, you have already done that. You know that, hey, this is the kind of invoicing and all of that, right? So it's irrelevant. The what is more relevant for me, I think, at this point in time, is that in a startup, if you are faced a problem, right, would you be able to get around with it either through a process or in an unstructured manner? It hardly matters. The end goal should be achieved, right? When you start a company, you won't have processes, right? You can't have processes, and it is illogical to even accept or expect processes to be there from day one, right? Either you can spend time in building those processes, right? Operational processes, or you basically find your core and create those products, right? But as you move up, as the company moves up, as the employee base moves up, there are obviously processes that you will have to put in place. But at that point in time, you will have people who will be able to put in place those processes, right? And you will have time to do that. So I think it's basically dependent on the journey of the enterprise, whether you need structured people, whether you need structured processes or not. It is basically based on how your company is progressing.
I'm going to ask a very typical question now, because hopefully I asked a few different ones.
Sure.
What have been some of the challenges that you have faced in your journey?
Challenges have been many. I mean, there have been times where nothing went. I'll connect this to the first question that you asked, right? People don't know, correct? So the first event that Dare2Compete did, okay, an on-ground event or so, was a disaster. I mean, I still don't get sleep when I think through that event, right? Anything and everything that can go wrong did go wrong in that particular engagement that we were doing, right? Um, and trust me, that was the first time, and possibly, I mean, it should be the only time where I couldn't face the other person in front of me, possibly the client or the other guys, because I was sort of ashamed, right, of myself that, hey, how can this happen, right? But there were certain things which were not in my control, right? I couldn't do anything, but I can't blame anyone because the responsibility was on me, right? So I've learned it the hard way that you need to acknowledge that there will be times where things will go wrong, right? But you can't just sit down and cry about it, right? You will always have to be positive, and you should basically, if you want to cry, take 2 minutes, cry about it, but just stand up and sort of move along. And since then, I think there have been times, many other times. I mean, there have been major. So just like how Flipkart crashed on their first big billion day, right? When the mobile phone, the sales used to happen or so, right? We also did have those crashes, right? But we learned from it and moved on, right? So I think we have come to an agreement that, hey, the things will go wrong. Let's see how we correct those things. And when the things are going wrong, how you manage them defines you. And that is the biggest thing that I tell my team, that don't worry about things going wrong, right? But don't panic. Think through at that point in time what is the best you can do it, because that will define how will you move forward in your career.
So in terms of, again, when you say challenges, one of the challenges many entrepreneurs face, especially when they're young and right out of college or school, is lack of family support. Yeah, because they feel, oh my gosh, you've done your engineering, you could get such a great job, get a steady salary. Why do you want to get into this entrepreneurial kind of venture, right? So again, did you face any of that? And if not, or if yes, then, or heard from others, what would be your advice to?
So the best thing that happened was, so I did face it, but I think we handled it very, very rationally, very frankly, right? So I'll give you. So when I went home, I told them that, hey, I want to move out. I want to start something of my own. My mom was like, क्या कर रखा है, इतनी सही job है, छोड़ रहा है, and all of that, right? The things that happen at every person's house, right? And she was in kitchen shouting and all of that. My dad was silent. He was like, let's look at it in a different sense, right? If you want to try out things, you cannot have an indefinite time to try it out. Okay, so he basically told me that, hey, it's okay if you want to try out new things. There is no harm about it. First, you need to be very, very confident that, hey, if things go wrong, you should be capable enough to ensure, and you should have the confidence that, hey, you'll be able to find a job and make some bread and butter, right? You should be able to support your family, right? I said, yes, I have that. So even if something go wrong, some things go wrong, I'll be able to at least get a salary or something. And so he said, okay. how much time do you think, for how much time you'll be able to survive with no revenue? And I said that I'll be able to survive about 9 to 10 months or so, right? So he basically told me that, okay, let's take 12 months. You dive into your startup, give it 12 months. If you're not able to make revenue or at least some income to sustain yourself, you move out after 12 months. I think that was the most rational call that was taken between me, my dad, and the family. And luckily it worked, right? So, yes, there was hue and cry, but I think logically and rationally, we were able to come to a conclusion that worked best for them, worked best for me. And we moved nicely. Yeah.
Right. So I guess what you're saying is while you must have passion, you also have to be pragmatic.
Yeah. Yes.
I think
family support is really, really critical. No matter what, you need to have family support.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think there's no doubt about it. So, we're coming to the end almost of our time. And so I, of course, want to not be that selfish and allow the students also to ask a few questions. So please put it in the chat box and I'll try my best to ask Ankit as quickly as we possibly can. But one of the questions that did come up for me was, what do you think is more important for a student entrepreneur? University marks or entrepreneurial skills? So, yeah.
I mean, if you have decided that you are jumping in, then obviously entrepreneurial skills. But there is no harm in having good marks on your resume, just in case if things don't stick together.
That's the pragmatic person talking. I can see that, of course, given, right? So another question that came really nice was, if given an opportunity, would you like to retract and rectify any entrepreneurial decision that you took in the past?
My first idea that didn't fly. I mean, if I were to go back in 2008, I would have launched a parallel portal of bookmyshow.com, and who knows, I would have killed BookMyShow. Who knows that? Yeah.
Awesome. So again, another one that came is there something you know now, but you did not know then, that you wish you knew and would have helped you really create a different journey for yourself?
I mean, I know the answer of this question. The only thing is that if I would have done that, I wouldn't have been here. So essentially at Deloitte, when I was resigning, I was given an option. So I was resigning because it was a consultant job where they had to fly abroad and all of that. And that's why I didn't have to sort of go. But they did give me an option to be an EA to the MD, right? Or the MD's office, right? And at that point in time, I didn't really understand what the EA is, right? But now when I know what an EA is and what the career trajectory an EA gets, which is massive, I mean, they jump roles, right? So if I knew that already, okay, at that point in time, I would have still be at Deloitte and be a consultant. I wouldn't have probably jumped into the entrepreneurial journey. Yeah.
Yes, these are some things that can really, really have an impact, right? And I think that's the element of psychology as well, right?
Yeah.
What is our mindset? And that entrepreneurial mindset, like you said, if you have an idea, just go for it, because otherwise you're just going to be, carried through, like what you just mentioned. Great, awesome. So I got a couple of people ask me, how did you come up with the name Dare2Compete?
So I owe it to my friends. So typically I wanted to sort of throw out that, hey, what should we name our startup? And then we were just looking at challenges. We were looking at competitions or so. And somebody said, let's put it as Dare. And I said, no, man, no Dare. Then somebody said compete. So I think I owe it to my friends, because it was the whole day where we created a list of 100 names or so. We couldn't select any. We basically clubbed 2 or 3 names: Dare, Compete, Dare2Compete. And then everybody said that, yes, this looks much, much nicer, better and all. Yeah. So I owe my name to my friends, to my MBA friends. Yeah.
So someone has asked the question that, marketing is obviously an expensive proposition. How do I really take my idea and spread it to the masses especially to needy people who really need it without having too much of a budget to spend on advertising? Any thoughts?
So I'll give you how we have sort of done it, right? In terms of until I think 6 months back, we didn't spend any money in the marketing, right? How we tackled it was that we created certain services which are free for our target audience. Because not in India, everywhere free thing sells. Like Geo was free, and that's why everybody keeps talking about it, right? So that's the catch that we did. So we launched few things which were free for our users, through which we got the network, and now we are sort of making money off some other things. Still, those things are free, right? And in the trajectory, I think you need to exhaust your connections, your overall family, friends, their connections or so, and then move on to something where they would need your money as such. But personally, I don't think it basically depends on the idea that you're pursuing, right? It might be a viral idea that may go really a cracker without spending money. But if, let's say, you're into an FMCG market, you need money to even buy space in any of the retailers, correct? So again, it basically depends on you. But you need to first think through and exhaust as many free options as you have, and then go into the money thing.
I've got so many questions on the chat box. My sincere apologies to all those who I'm not able to use your questions, but I'm doing my best. Yeah. So Ankit, one more question over here is that how important is the validation of an idea before moving forward? How do you know about the feasibility of your idea? So what would you be your answer?
Yeah, I think the feasibility of the idea only comes from when you talk to the customers, or when you hear customers or observe them. So basically, 3-4 things that I did when you think that, hey, this is the problem, correct? First, you need to validate that there is a problem. Solution is a different angle altogether, correct? If you are thinking it's a problem, first you need to validate it by maybe talking to a few like-minded people or who are facing that problem. Talking sometimes doesn't help, very frankly. So what I do is that I observe them. Many a times when I observe them, I then get to know that, hey, yes, this is a problem, correct? And the third thing that we do is, once you have validated your problem, then you need to validate whether the solution that you're thinking through is actually the solution of that problem or not, right? Or that basically becomes or creates another problem at hand, correct? So I would say validate the problem by observing the customer or the person or the target audience, as well as observing them. Observing is more important than talking, I believe. And then do a similar thing with the solution as well. Give them that solution, observe them, talk to them, take their feedback, implement, do this whole cycle again and again. And that's where you basically need to create your MVP, your minimum viable product, and then go into the market.
So I'm not sure if I got the question right, but I'm still going to try. What if your idea is not part of your core competency or your education qualifications? Like you're an engineer and then you're doing something in another space, right? So what do you think? Is it a good idea to do that, or do you think you kind of withdraw that? I hope I've got the question right.
No. I mean, I personally think that whether so idea is an idea, right? Then you need to think through whether I have the required skills to pursue that idea or not, correct? So let me say that you're not a techie, correct? You don't know anything about coding. You're a commerce guy or an arts guy, right? But you have an idea of building an Instagram, let's assume, right? And Instagram cannot work without tech, correct? So then it's not that you should do away with that idea. Probably you need to find ways, or maybe a co-founder, which is a tech co-founder, and get to that idea. So never drop an idea thinking through that you're not best suited at that point in time. You need to ensure, and that's the biggest challenge for entrepreneur as well, that you need to ensure and you need to get into the shoes that, hey, what should I learn, correct? Or what should I have my other team members or the skill set of other team members so that I get to where I am.
Yeah.
Because it's not about only the idea. Getting to the idea is also important.
Great. So I think we're last 3 minutes, and I'm going to make maximum use of the last seconds as well, Ankit. So, and this is a question that really I think will resonate a lot with everybody. Is that what do you do when you get criticized as an entrepreneur?
Oh, very, very frankly, I take it very, very lightly. I reflect on it. But personally, I don't engage with that criticism. What I've learned is that never engage with the criticism, because you may not know from which mindset that person is criticizing. Possibly talk to them, figure out that whether that criticism is fine or not. If yes, then probably you need to work on, right? But I mean, personally, I don't engage. But if anybody is talking about anything, I do validate that whether that criticism is valid or not. If it is valid, I ensure I take efforts to sort of remove it.
Great.
Yeah.
So again, Ankit, as I said, right down to the last minute, right?
Sure.
So if we have to kind of look at pitching an idea, you said you practiced and you did it. Quick tips on what's the best way to create your pitch. 30 seconds to pitch your pitch.
I think two things. One, you need to think through as to what is the big idea that you want to sell. Because if you have only 30 seconds, you need to sell that in 30 seconds, right? And the second thing, I mean, think through what is the problem that you're solving and what is the solution. You need to just tell these two things in 30 seconds, nothing else, right? However, the second thing is practice. So if you know these things and you have 30 seconds, maybe put down a timer or 60 seconds or 90 seconds, possibly practice it. And that's how you'll be able to pitch it. And try and create a story around your problem and the solution, because it is very, very easy to tell a story rather than a statement which has no relation to whatever you are trying to say in that problem, because that person may not be from your background.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much once again, Ankit. And I'm very sorry to whoever's questions I've not been able to ask, but I think we've used up our time right down to the last second. And so, Ankit, thank you very, very much for your time and for your wonderful, wonderful pieces of information and knowledge and expertise that you have shared with us. I'm sure it will play a big role. I think I saw the feedback poll already, and I've seen that we got 100% answer yes on taking back something new to go back with. So awesome. I think it's really been of some value to everybody, if not a lot of value. And I'm going to just end this thing by saying what Ankit has got right behind the second frame. It's very what you call it, fancy people say, work smart. Well, let me tell you, I'm still traditional, and I can see that Ankit is still traditional. Well, work hard, okay, and never give up. I think I truly believe in that. So thank you, Ankit, once again.
Thank you so much, Karon. It was a pleasure interacting with you. Thank you so much for the invitation, and the session has been great.
Our pleasure, absolutely. Thank you.
That was one of the greatest discussions that I've ever heard and witnessed. So just on an ending note, I'd like to thank Mr. Ankit Aggarwal for taking his time out of his busy schedule for addressing the audience and inspiring us with his wisdom and knowledge. We were truly honored to have you amongst us, sir. And I'd also like to extend our sincerest gratitude to Ms. Karon Shaiva for being such a wonderful host this evening. Thank you both of you.
Thank you so much. Bye. Have a nice day, guys.